Okay, we are going to get started. Good evening. The planning board meeting on Tuesday, October 4th will come to order. Rebecca, everything that's on the agenda is going to be heard, right? There's not going to be anything continued. Okay, good. So let's do the A&R for Johnson Street first. Do we?
This property is at the corner of Johnson Street and Mill Road, right where Farnham Street kind of takes a right off of, a left off of Johnson, the Mill Road intersection. The applicant is proposing to create 4 lots out of 2. It is in the R2 zoning district, requiring 1 acre of zoning. Each of those lots are approximately 2.5 acres, so total in 5 in total.
Oh, I see.
One lot has a house.
I see 2 lots.
Yep.
Where's the, do we actually have the Form A?
Yes, so we'll bring that up next, but I just wanted to show you where we're talking about.
Okay.
So one of those lots had a structure on it, one did not. So this is the Form A. If you look at the bottom center of the screen, that is the intersection of Mill Road and Johnson Street. So the lots begin Lot 1, 2, 3, and 4. They all meet the 1 acre zoning. They all meet the contiguous buildable area. And they all meet the required frontage.
Does Lot 3 pass the Rowan rule?
What is that?
That's the one that if you do anything funky in the back. Do you notice how 3 narrows in the back?
Yep.
I was going to ask the same thing. Access to the driveways too, that this actually complies with a A&R.
Well, I mean, there's, let's see, they all have the frontage.
Yep.
They all have the size. They all have the CBA. They're all on an existing public way, a record.
But it's Lot 3 that adequately have access to the road with the driveways. Is that conforming?
Well, it's already there.
Existing condition, that house is there
Now
today.
they're dividing it so that they have to meet new conditions.
Well, I don't think there's anything that's in that. I'm more concerned, if you notice how
It chokes down, yeah.
the thing chokes down in the back.
Right.
Although I think I may have been looking at the stone wall, not at the,
So the stone wall is actually the lot division between these 2 existing lots. So
yeah.
I thought you may want to condition a note on the plan
Yeah, you have to
identifying Lot 1 and Lot 2 becoming Lot 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, or 1A, 2A.
We have to do the before and after.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that isn't depicted well, the existing property line versus proposed. As far as lot width requirement, Lynn, it's 100-foot width from the frontage to the building, and so Lot 3 complies with that.
Yeah,
What about the adequate, an A&R also has to comply with adequacy of access to a public way.
Right.
And at the driveway being at an intersection, is that compliant now with our building driveway codes?
As far as I know, the driveway code is only 10 feet in from the abutting line, so that is more than 10 feet in, and like I said, that's an existing condition.
So, yeah, just make sure that there's a provision with lots, what's a legitimate lot. I think it's okay, because I think it's 50 feet. I was looking at, when I was looking at it over there, it looked like it got really narrow, but I see that it's the stone wall.
Right.
Yeah, what they need to do a little bit is they need to show the transition from the old lots to the new lots.
Yep, I agree. A note needs to be added
Which
indicating. Yep.
which they haven't done, and they may have to do. What are the old lot numbers? Why are they calling them 1, 2, 3, and 4? Why don't they call the old lots 1, 2?
They never define the old lot numbers, so I agree. A note needs to be added depicting either Lot 1 becoming Lot 1A and 2A, and Lot 2 becoming 3A and 4A, or something to that effect. But they do not show the existing lot numbers.
Where is the, is the only piece of wetland that little strip at the very back?
That's all they've identified.
That's
There's
all
a
they've
drainage
identified.
easement in the back.
Okay.
There's a stream there to the top, almost left, and a drainage easement 30 feet wide on Lot 1.
Okay. Yeah, just, as I said, make sure that, look at the definition. I think it's 50 feet all the way to the back, and I think that's what's required under our bylaw.
For lot width?
All the way through,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll look at it.
And also make sure the corner lot has, the way the frontage is set up,
Yeah.
that it is compliant frontage on both sides. I just forget off the top of my head whether you're allowed to wrap around, you know, it shows 244 feet, but I don't know if that's the way it's allowed to be counted.
I believe the frontage is compliant, so, but I will double check it and I'll confirm it with the building commissioner.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
I still have a concern about the driveway access at an intersection. I don't think,
But it's already there.
but as soon as, but you know, you're taking away half the lot.
Well, but I mean, that driveway's still there, it's an existing condition.
But it's an existing condition for the existing lot, but when you change the lot, it's no longer an existing. So now you're making it more non-conforming.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't have anything, that doesn't have anything to do with zoning, it's not a zoning issue.
No, an A&R requires adequacy of access. That's one of the A&R components too.
Right, but it has it, I mean, by
Well,
definition, it
if
has
you-
it.
If you change it, then you have to still, right?
But I guess, what would you do differently? What would you want to,
Well, if they're not allowed to put a driveway in now, in an intersection like that, then they'd have to come up with a configuration that worked with their A&R.
well, no, but there's no restrictions on where you put the driveway.
I believe there is restriction. You can't put a driveway right in the middle of an intersection.
Well, it's not right at the middle of an intersection, but
Well,
there's nothing in our bylaw that restricts that.
I think there is,
10 feet off the abutting property line is what?
off the budding property line, but what about an intersection? You can be backing out into an intersection? Really?
Well,
There's
there's
nothing?
nothing in the zoning, and I don't think
Okay.
there's anything in the planning board rules or regulations for that, so. You know, it's,
Okay.
you know, maybe it's a gap, but it is what it is.
Okay, I'll check
So,
on that.
why don't you check, but what I would recommend is that we make a motion to have the planner, approve the Form A with all the provisions about getting notices and resolving all the open issues.
So frontage, lot width, and confirmed driveway performance. And you agree that we should depict existing
Yeah.
lots versus proposed lots?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And whether it's on conservation is their problem, not ours.
that's their problem. I mean, it would be, if they create lot one, that might create a problem, because lot one's probably the one that most likely could have a problem. That's their problem, and, well, 3 is already built, so you're not gonna, and then you're not gonna run into any wetland problem there, it's too far away. The only thing that I could think of is, beyond that, is if in 4, where they want to set the house creates a problem, and they end up with a variance situation, but that's their problem. You know, because they could always go back, they could just leave them there and not do anything with them if they wanted, yeah. So. Okay, so would somebody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
okay, any further discussion?
I'm
All-
gonna abstain until we get a resolution on the driveway. I think there's an issue still there.
Okay, but we're going
Yep.
to check, so, fair enough. So, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
And opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Okay, good. Okay, let's move on to the next item. We're back to Forgetta Development and Princeton Development. If Rebecca or Jean, if you can update us on where we are on that and what are the open issues, that'd be great.
So tonight, Chris Hudris is here, I believe, right? Yes, Chris? He's going to present a revised landscaping plan. Joe Pesnola will present, what you have rolled up in front of you is renderings of the residential building showing landscaping and materials and layout. Joe will also provide an update on peer review comments from both civil and stormwater review. A height waiver memo has also been provided at the request of the board, so I believe Jeff Brown will review that memo with you. If you didn't get to see it, it was just submitted this morning in your packet, so I provided hard copy if you need a minute to review that. And then there are viewpoint angles presented from the commercial component from both Barker Street and French Farm Road that we can review as well.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Brown, Princeton Properties. Jean's gone over our agenda for tonight pretty accurately. For any questions by the board, we've brought our entire development team tonight. So we have Andrew Chabin and Claire Collins from Princeton Properties, John Smolak, counsel on this project, Rob Schaefer, our architect on the project, and Chris Huntress will present the landscaping, and Joe Pisnola will do an overview of the rendering and an update on the peer review. So I don't think there's anything more I can add, and I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you. For the record, Chris Huntress, Huntress Associates. Been working on the project for some time. We had prepared previously some landscape plans, lighting plans, some details. There was a request at the last hearing to focus on particularly the entryway and provide some additional detail and screening for how folks arrive. So I'm going to take you through that, and then if there's questions on the overall aspect of the plan, I'm happy to answer it. So just to orient everybody, Osgood Street is out here, and over on this side. Osgood Street is this way. Commercial development along the front, the main entry over here across from Barker Farm. A couple of things that we've done to address kind of the streetscape and frontage from Osgood Street are to start a post and rail fence. It's a granite post and wood rail fence, 2-rail fence. And it starts here at the retaining wall and actually wraps across the frontage all the way into the main entrance and then partially around the cul-de-sac, really defining that commercial entrance. Also mirrored on the opposite side, kind of as you arrive from this point here into here. It's reinforced with a pedestrian scale of 12 or 14-foot light fixture, corneal fixture with a cap top that sheds down. It's an LED fixture, and street trees that are kind of alternating between the light poles as you come in. The focus as you arrive here, which was part of the question, as to how that will look. And we added some additional plant material to the turnaround, or to the roundabout there, which include some upper story evergreens. We use some Colorado blue spruce, some, what else do we have in there? We have some eastern redbud, some grasses, and some evergreen shrubs as well on that turnaround. And then looking at the end of the building here on building B for the residential portion, we actually took back 2 parking spaces kind of on this side right here to provide some additional green space, continued the street tree presence around that corner, and then provided some additional planting on the end here. I've got an enlargement that I'm going to jump to. So this is the turnaround here. Fence comes in and kind of breaks at the entry drive. There's always a light on the left-hand side as you enter, and the fence terminates here, really, which is the start of the residential properties. So we did some additional planting at the end of this building, which included, again, some evergreen plants, and there are some more artistic renderings that Rob's going to take you through in a few minutes. But again, we took the 2 spaces out here and added a street tree, so you've got 3 kind of at the end. Got an ornamental light pole at the crosswalk here. 2 evergreens, some maiden grass in the front, and then some foundation plants, which include a variety of lilac and rhododendron and spirea, and also some eastern redbud and birch as well. We'll have to go into more detail, but if you've got questions on landscape, I'm happy to address those as well.
Do you have any questions on landscaping? I guess the one thing I'll say, I'm glad you put something in the front. I know you gotta play with some slopes and stuff there, but I think something simple and subtle that sort of creates a distinction between sort of the property and the outside, I think is a good thing. So I think that works out pretty well, so. And this is, I think it's effective, because that's the main focal point of when people come in, so, yeah.
Just show you that detail real quick, and then we'll add it. The detail across that frontage would look something like this bottom elevation here. We see the ornamental light post and the split rail fence backed with some evergreen shrubs and vegetation.
Yeah.
It's really, like John says, to define that frontage and bring it down in scale from to a pedestrian scale and tie the whole project together.
When you do a sidewalk,
Yes.
each end of the property along Osgood, will it be on the Osgood side of the picket fence?
I'll probably have to let Joe answer that one, I'm not sure.
Yeah, this, for the record, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates. The sidewalk would be butting up against the roadway, Osgood Street. So the fence would be behind the sidewalk. So
What happens when they plow?
when,
The town plows?
well, they're gonna plow the roadway, and then they'll have to plow the sidewalk if they do plow the sidewalk in this area. There'll be an area between the edge of the sidewalk and the fence for that snow storage to go.
So when the plow comes down, it's throwing snow onto the side, is it gonna go on the sidewalk?
It'll go on the sidewalk initially, yeah. Then they'll have to either plow the sidewalk, depending on whether the town maintains that
Once we decide
section.
who's gonna maintain the sidewalk.
Right.
Thank you very much.
So integrating everything that we've done here between our grading, the architectural elevations, the material work, as well as Chris just went over, the landscaping. We have made some changes through this process to try to green up the main street, the area between the commercial and the residential. What you're seeing on the image on the left is that end of Building B with Chris's enhanced landscaping there. You're also seeing the tree on the right-hand side. It would be right at the right exit to the roundabout. And then what you're seeing looking down is what happened when we established more green on that streetscape by taking out parking spaces, bringing out landscaped islands, and being able to put trees in there that will be able to really take over that view. On the right-hand side, you see kind of a perspective you probably won't be able to see from any direct vantage point. You're up a little higher. You're probably standing on the roof of building 2 looking down, but we're trying to give you a sense of what that facade will look like with that greenery there. What's not evident there with the trees in the way, and we can go to a picture that has no trees, is the effect of the elevation. that we've done here. And as you move down this building, you'll start to see the floor disappear into the ground. And then again, as you move down to the back of building C, the same thing happens. And that's just indicative of the challenging grades that we're working with. We think it's a positive. It helps blend that site through to it. But we've worked hard on the materials and the architecture, as well as incorporating that into the site, so to try to give you a sense of that. We do have one more that shows the back of buildings B and C. We had said that they were to be designed much like the front of the buildings. So this kind of shows you that. What this elevation also shows is the main entry bump out at each of the building has on that side of the building, which is really the primary entrance into each of the residences, and that's down on this building. It's down on the left-hand side, right. So we do have actual examples of some of the materials and the stone, not the exact color of the stone, but the texture and feel and massing on the stone, as well as some of the other materials that will be incorporated into that. Rob Schaefer's here, the architect, as well as Claire from Princeton, who has been working very close with Rob to define the vision here.
Is this the same material layout that you presented at the last time we went through this?
Pretty much. It's just in...
I
we
just
were
had the impression there that it was going to look terrible.
Well, we were having some problems. Yeah.
They actually did change the dates from the last time to this time.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's not as dark. Yeah.
Is this the color scheme that you're proposing?
You want to step up, Claire, Rob?
Is that okay if I ask? I'm just curious. I like the color scheme.
I'm Claire Collins from Princeton Properties. So yes, this is the color scheme that we're proposing. It's a kind of a gray palette of neutrals. We chose this because color trends are going more gray, but it's also very classic. We think it gives a very elegant look. The reason that we break it up the way that we do is because it's a really very large building, and there's the need to differentiate the different planes so it doesn't seem quite so imposing. So we have the lighter neutral that you can see on the 3D rendering, the medium tone, which is the board and batten that you see with the vertical siding, and the darker espresso color that's also the standard clapboard as an accent.
We can pass this around if that's helpful.
So that gives you the colors. The actual texture that we'll be using is a flat material. Which is like this. So it's the same cementatious siding, but it's a flat. I don't know if you want to pass this around. Just leave it here.
Is this just aesthetic with this overhang, or is there some other purpose?
It's aesthetic.
It'll cover a bit of the pop out a little bit. We'll detail it in with that.
Do you have any of the pictures that zone in on the entryway? Because this is a case where, especially on the street side, the front side, I don't think the entryway is going to be symmetrically in the middle, so it would be helpful to understand where the entryways were and what they looked like.
It's a little hard to see on this one because the tree's in the way.
Yeah.
That's without the tree.
Joe's gonna have it blown up on the screen for
I
you.
think that's,
Okay.
that's the backside.
That's the reverse side.
Which is actually the main entrance to the building. All the
But it looks
parking,
the same on both sides
So-
of the popped out entrance.
It's a little
Yeah.
bit different on the other side. There's a
Yeah.
little bit more of a
Slightly
vestibule,
subdued.
and that's where all the mailboxes are.
Yeah,
For the residents.
I'm more interested on the other side. I'd like to see it because I do think that that is, you need to have a sense of place about your entryway and the fact that, I mean, I understand why it's not symmetrical, but when it's symmetrical, you're drawn to it. When it's not symmetrical, you know, it has to have still have a strong presence.
It's actually not gonna be used as an entrance because that parking that's associated there is associated with the retail area. The main parking for these buildings is central to the 4 residential buildings. So as you come through the circle and go into that, now you've arrived at the residential area of the site. And that's where the entrances are all facing that way, associated with their parking.
The main entrance
Essentially,
on that
this,
one.
so you would park in this area and enter the building from that, in that direction. The one in that
Yes.
picture image right there. So that one's enhanced a little, slightly more than the other one to provide that sense of entry in place, like you're
But the
speaking of.
problem is well, two things I wanted to ask you, and they are related maybe, is that from an overall aesthetics of the entire site, that main road, if you will, between the residential and commercial, I think is very important in the sense that we just spent a lot of time talking about coming into the property, going to the circle, and then you immediately go to the right, and that's the salient feature. And I think you did a nice job with the landscaping, but I'm sort of asking for the actual entryway. I'm just trying to get a sense, is it visually appealing? Does it create a sense of space, or is it just flat? I can't tell.
This,
This is the one.
looking at the overall site, when you come in, the residents would be directed to this,
Right.
to come to here, so this is their place. And this is the commercial place. This is, parking is essentially for this area here. So the residents this creates somewhat of a screening as well for them. And so their entry is coming off of these areas here.
So that's not, this entrance is like right here.
Is this one right here?
Oh, it's on the back. So this is the back side?
Right, that's this side, as if your camera's here.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That would be we call it the front of the residential portion. So I think that's the end.
It's not this.
Yeah.
This is
No.
It's really an exit. Essentially, that's an exit.
This is it's an entrance.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it, yeah, I mean, you can get in and get out. I'm not so worried about it from that perspective, but I do think that architecturally, it's, at least from my perspective, it's more important what's on the street that's the dividing line between the commercial and the residential than what's on the other side. That's, and my related question is what I've noticed you've done here, and this was a suggestion I had made before, but on the back side of it, there is a grass strip between the end of the parking in the building, whereas on the other side, you basically have the parking, the walkway, and then you go right into the building. And
Right, you're saying that this is sidewalk and then a grass area here.
well,
And then on this side, this grass area is a little bit wider.
I can't even tell. It looks like on the other side, there's no grassed area at all.
On the retail facing side, this is
On the retail facing side, it doesn't look like there's anything.
Right, there is a landscaped area there between the sidewalk and the building. And as I said, as you move down that building in this view here, as you move down that building, what's happening is the grades on the roadway are going up, but the building is staying down. So you're losing the sight of that in this rendering.
So does that mean that what you see from the first floor continues to go down? I mean, is it?
This is a hole in there, right?
Yeah. So there's a whole.
So where at some point are you gonna get to a point where some of the first floor is below grade?
below the grade of the roadway, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. It's like in any place on the hill.
Right, and that happens at the end of building B and the end of building D.
Okay.
Sorry, so these people are gonna look out their window and see a piece of wall here.
Right.
See, I guess the point that I had been sort of made was that when you have the parking goes right into the sidewalk and there's no buffer between the two, the cars go right up and they cover a foot of the sidewalk because the way the front of the car goes over, and it looks crappy, I think. It really does. I thought you were gonna put a little bit more of a grass buffer on the upside of it.
Well, we have introduced 6 landscaped islands throughout that side.
Okay.
So you're
They
seeing,
gotta put a buffer, cause it goes down.
well, no,
I mean,
those,
it's a wall, I'm saying, so.
but the six landscaped islands here, actually, there's 8 of them across, if you include the 2 that are flanking the pedestrian connection. Those will jut out into the parking area to provide some vertical green.
All the way out to the,
within
okay.
it. So, where is that?
This one right here.
Right, but the question is, can the grass go like here, too?
Yeah.
So that the car doesn't go over the sidewalk? Right, aren't you saying, can the grass go here, so that the car doesn't go over the sidewalk?
Well, that was my point. Yeah, that was my point, yeah.
But that, right, what we find is, if you make that grass too narrow, then it's not really viable as a green, and then you have, as you said, the cars are over, hanging over the grass, which tend to not have it be very, serve the purpose. What we thought is to get vertical green with the ability to put trees in there, and when you're experiencing a parking lot, that's what makes it feel less of a parking lot. So that was the introduction of those 8 islands, was to get the ability to put trees in there, to get some vertical, and to get this look, rather than anything we could do in a narrow green strip.
So I think the question, and I see the verticals, the 8 strips, they look great. If you look at the rendering on the left, which is the rear of the building, you can see a grass buffer between the building and the parking lot.
Right.
Why isn't there a similar grass buffer on the front of the building?
There is a similar.
Because what you've done here is, you have the ability to put the grass buffer of that dimension on the rear of the building. What's preventing a grass buffer of that dimension on the front of the building? Because I think what we're saying is, that looks pretty good on the rear, but we don't see that on the front.
Can I just flip your terms for you? Because
Yeah,
the
I know
front
you're
is the back
talking-
and the back is the front.
So let me say it another way. The grass strip that you show on the side opposite from Osgood
Yep,
has a pretty good depth.
Right.
And we can see it, and it gives a nice separation between the parking lot, the building, and the sidewalk. We're saying that looks pretty good. On the Osgood side of the building, you don't have that strip. I know there's a very small strip, but it's not of that dimension. So I just feel like we're not directly addressing the question. Why isn't there a similar dimension of grass strip on the Osgood Street side of the building?
The 2 angles. The first is to have that more defined sense of entry with the element on both buildings B and C on the residence side of the building. On that side, and the second point is the effectiveness of that grass strip, that green strip, on the commercial side, given these grade challenges that we have. Now, what the grade challenges are directly related to trying to get the commercial to be vertical, to balance between the 2 sites, but to get that as vertical as we can, to somewhat block the residential portion in accordance with the original vision, which creates these 2 areas of holes, if you will. And if you envision this picture, we would, instead of going, up with the grass, we would have a sidewalk, and then we would still have that drop on a third of the one side of the building. Really eliminating what you're driving for here, which is more green that is visible to the streetscape, not so much the residents. So what we're trying to do is balance all of those things to also make the experience for the residents as nice as possible, where they're going to always park and always enter the building for the most part. And on the Main Street side, keep the green vertical.
On that note, you keep saying that, like, building B and C is only gonna use the entrance on the side furthest away from Osgood. You keep calling that the front entranceway, which I understand that's a more predominant entranceway. But you're also coming to us and saying it's a mixed-use development, you're gonna have shared parking, because people are gonna park in the commercial side during the daytime or after hours. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say everybody's gonna park behind the building, but then come for a parking waiver, because you're gonna be using some of the parking in front of the building, because the residential and retail complement each
But
other.
our parking waiver is 10 cars.
I know, but it's
And
still.
really, truth be told, our parking waiver is just to align to consider the mixed use, to consider that possibility, but to also align with what we believe the parking ratio should be around 1.75. We believe the vast majority of our residents will be out in this back area, and
But some are gonna use the fronts too, or the side we're calling the
understand
front.
that, and they can, and they will have the ability, Claire, to go into those doors. They'll have a fob or something.
Yes.
No, actually, they don't.
They don't.
No, it's an egress only.
So when you say you want the
So it's an
residents to
equity-
use
it's
the
an-
commercial area, they're gonna be able to go out to it, but then they gotta carry their packages around to the back?
The elevator is at this entrance on this side, on that elevation right there. The elevator's there.
But they can't get in.
The mailboxes are
This is the
there,
non-Osgood side.
Pardon me?
This is
Yes.
the wood side.
facing towards the back of the
When
site.
you're coming from the commercial side, and let's say there's a grocery store there.
Yep.
And you're carrying something, or you're going up to Butcher Boy. You gotta walk around the building to get into it?
Yes, but essentially, that entrance is towards that in the building. Where you actually come from commercial, it's actually closer, because in terms of length of distance, you would walk between the two buildings, go around the corner into the entrance, where, as opposed to down the length of the sidewalk.
If you're coming from the restaurant building number 2 and going to building number B, it's twice the distance to walk around the building.
It depends on what end of the commercial you're talking about, but yes.
Well, if you're at restaurant
Right.
number 2.
Right, I
and
hear
you're
you.
going to building
But if
B,
you're coming from the middle area, it'd be relatively,
it's almost always longer to
okay.
walk
I
around
didn't
behind.
necessarily want,
But isn't the point?
just trying to stay away from it. It
And
makes-
that's one thing, I mean, to some degree, why you would want to be all egress and not entrance.
I can
will
explain why it
come back.
works. I didn't,
I
let's
mean,
try
it
to-
seems to me to be kind of a little bit peculiar, but especially since I think from the point of view of the overall site, that where you have residential and commercial, you don't want to make your back of the residential to the commercial. You want the residential and the commercial to flow together.
well, then we sort of mix up the concern we had presented before about trying to screen it and subdue it somewhat. The trees and that were helping to screen it. The other obstacle to deal with is that grade, where, that connectivity at the middle, and then the grade's what that ends up
I want to
leaving.
come back to, because I'll admit to being sort of confused that I think some of the things, your choice of, what you're saying in the front, the way we want to handle landscaping is the vertical approach. So that means it juts out into the parking every so often. That's actually not, in and of itself, I get that. And then your approach to the backside is going to be to leave a green space buffer. So that's the solution that you're proposing, correct?
In addition to trees in the back.
Yeah, in addition to trees in the back. So the question is, did you do that solely or primarily for aesthetic reasons, because you think that just works best? Or did you do it because you couldn't, in the front, pull the building further back? Or you didn't think you could pull the building further back to allow for a green buffer as well.
It's driven from that entryway at the residence entrance, and the way that we wanted that to really pop out and give the residents a sense of entrance.
It projects out further. There's a entry canopy, come to the door, and then a enclosed vestibule at the second door, and your mailbox is there. The other one is just a porch with a, pardon me?
Yeah, I'm
Well, you
focusing on
keep
the
saying around
front.
back, but
If
you-
I want to focus on the front,
Yeah.
and so please,
Right,
bear with me.
That's those bump outs set this location. So if those were not there, then we could balance the buildings in this landscaped area.
So if what we're not there,
The entry bump outs,
Yes.
Go
that
ahead.
element there.
That projects out further than the other side,
And
the
that's
one on
why
the other
it's,
side.
that's why it's kind of skewed to the commercial side.
But they're only for egress.
Yes.
One of the screens.
Can I,
These are for egress. These two bump outs are primary entry. That's where
so
the
I guess
mailboxes are, that's where the elevators
the
are.
question ends up being, I think, what I'm saying is, if you move those two buildings back 5 feet by adding, and put a grass strip there, what's preventing you from doing that? Keep everything else the same, but just move it back 5 feet and put
Well,
grass in there.
then you take out green space from the other side in order to do that. And you
Well,
you
why?
really-
Why do you take out
But
green
you
space on the
wouldn't,
other
you
side?
wouldn't really gain anything because the sidewalk's going up. You're never gonna notice that. That space is down below the
Because the
sidewalk.
hole I'm mentioning.
So you've lost a great potential for the other image that has this one here, where you have a nice green space there, which provides that, and it's really grass. It's, it's not,
We could look at shifting this way, that gives us both pieces, but I think we're gonna potentially lose some parking.
Okay, that was the question that really I was asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this, what would have to happen is this whole group of parking and garages would have to shift to the north. And then the buildings with the bump outs and the sidewalk could shift to the north with it, which would open up some green area in here.
Can I just ask a question?
But we've got,
Yeah, let me finish. Yeah, go through it,
with the
yeah.
whole, to have that be effective green space, I think it would have to be on between the parking and the sidewalk, and it would have to be a healthy enough distance.
That also.
That was gonna be my question. If you moved the whole thing back 5 feet, it would not help John's concern to
Right.
have the green space be inside the hole,
right,
right?
you got it.
He's saying he wants it on the top side of the hole, right?
Right, but for that to be, Chris, help me out, for that to be an effective space in between the edge of pavement and the sidewalk that would be blocked by cars parked there most of the time, how wide would that have to be, and how would you plant that? To have it
Plant anything.
serve the
significant.
purpose.
Yeah, plant anything significant in there, it would have to be, 4 to 6 feet. For a shrub, it would have to be at least 8 feet deep, for a tree, to get it to really grow to any size.
How many feet deep is the grass border on the riverside of the building?
That has children. I think it varies.
It varies, it's probably 6 or 7 feet, at its narrow.
And in that case, it's the sidewalk, then the grass.
Same deal, the sidewalk and the grass.
Okay. Now again, tell me, maybe it's just me, but I don't understand. We talk about this hole. I'm still missing it, I'm sorry.
Here, look at this picture up close.
Yeah,
You can see how the building goes down behind that wall. You see?
It's the gap between
Because the
the
grade,
building and the sidewalk. Okay,
yes.
yeah, it's not a.
Yeah, it goes down.
It's a gap.
No, it goes down.
It's a trench.
It's lower, yeah, it's more like a
They're
trench.
going to look out their window
At all.
at a wall.
Well,
That's
yeah,
the point.
because they're a little bit lower, so, okay. So
Yeah.
the grade of the sidewalk's a little bit higher than the grade of the
Yes,
the
that's what I was trying
landscaping
to point
next
out.
to it.
Yeah, we've got.
About halfway up the
We've got
windows.
a retaining wall starting on building B, about 2/3 of the building down, and it runs up and around. The elevation outside of that, gets up as high as 150, 157. So down in that hole, it's 2 or 3 feet.
So you're saying that the grade difference between the sidewalk and the grass or whatever right next to the building is 2 to 3 feet immediately?
At the building corner, at the far north, east building corner.
Right, and some of that is obviously gonna be covered by retaining wall, because you don't wanna have a 2 to 3 foot gap that you could fall into.
Yeah, as I said, the retaining wall starts about 2/3 of the building down and runs down to the interconnecting.
So
sidewalk.
what you're saying is really because of the retaining wall, you would have to put the grass strip in front of the parking, not behind the parking.
Or on the top of the retaining wall. On the high side of the retaining wall, on the parking side of the retaining. Either whether it's against, whether the sidewalk is against the retaining wall or the grass strip is against the retaining wall, I don't think it matters. It's a matter of whether or not it's better suited to be in either location.
Well, what matters is how close the front of the car is to the window of the people who are sitting in whatever room that is in the place. And then, you know, the more you can push the car back, I would hate to sit and look at somebody running their motor.
But isn't this, I mean, that's really, if they can rent them, why is it our business if the car is parked there? I guess I don't get it, right? It's what the market bears. If someone doesn't care if there's a retaining wall right there, then why do we care if there's a retaining wall? I'm sorry. I mean, I
Well,
had kids that
one
lived
level
in
you're right, but
Boston,
at
like,
another
you
level
wouldn't believe the
that,
apartments I've rented. Like, they don't.
I mean, but then you can make the argument, why do we bother even having site plan review? Because people wanna buy and put their business in a building that looks crappy and everything.
No,
would-
but
would-
no, I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to be argumentative, but, I mean, I think like whether a car is parked in front of a window, I mean, we're getting.
Well,
rid
at
of
some
lots of
point, you're
traffic.
right, but the point ends up being is, it's a little bit where, you know, in the end, I'm realistic, I don't wanna propose something that doesn't work and might be worse. But what I think it's fair to say is, and I agree with Dave, is that generally, nice places, expensive places don't have a conflict of uses. And we want this to be a nice place, it is a nice place, this developers intend to have a nice place. And a conflict of use where, just in my mind, is not something that would be appropriate. Now, I don't know whether, you know, again, I don't wanna over-engineer this thing. I do think the fact that there's the grass strips actually make a big difference, but, what would be the distance from the edge of the parking lot to the building itself on this side? What are we talking about? How many feet?
10 feet.
Might be a
10
little more
feet?
than that.
It's,
Well, at the closest point,
at the closest point.
it's 10 feet.
And how wide's the parking lot?
60 feet.
No, how wide is, I mean, how wide's not the park, I'm sorry, the sidewalk.
Sidewalk's 5 feet.
And so then there would be another 5 feet?
At the closest point where the largest bump out is. So you've got 5 and 5 there, bump out.
Okay,
two-
maybe
two
that's
feet
part of the
each.
problem, is the scale doesn't show up, but the sidewalk looks like there's like about barely another foot or two
Yeah.
from the end
I
of the
mean, Mr. Chairman, we can certainly, we hear you and we understand it's a concern, so the more we can get, the better. So we can investigate shifting this to the north and getting some more room in there.
I mean, even it would seem to me as if you got 5 feet there, even making it a little, you know, even eking out another 2 or 3 feet would make a big difference in landscaping, and I think it would just look more pleasing, but.
And your preference would obviously be for that landscaping to be up with the parking, and we can work Chris.
I mean, what do you think?
Appropriately shrub
I
that.
don't wanna, yeah.
I agree.
And then that'll also address, the issue of the cars,
Yeah,
the shiny headlights.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think Chris probably could think of something that would work pretty well there that would balance the interests, so.
Joe, let's take the chairman's comments into account, and we'll bring it back.
Let's do that.
Yeah, okay.
Now, this is good for B and C. Okay. What does the front look, what does the Osgood side look like on the two back buildings?
Like that.
Are they, they're gonna have to go around in the back of those two?
No, here's, the Osgood's, this side of building D and this side of building E will be this perspective with the large entry, the jutted out entry here and here, so that'll be there, but.
will they also have the depth of lawn in front, like is shown on the riverside of E?
They have more than the commercial side of B and C. So it looks about the same as the resident side of B and C.
I assume they have a back entrance also.
Just E.
For egress for emergency.
D is on the same side
Yeah,
because there's no
that I
back.
can see just
Yeah,
being.
but E, because of parking and back,
um,
that one, you will be able to go in and out either side of the building.
So, John, I agree with your perspective, and Dave, and I think most people about the strip of grass on the Osgood side. But I still have another question about the egress only. Can we explore that a little bit?
Can I explain why that is? Due to the grading of the sidewalk, we're gonna have to have some steps into those entrances or exits. Mass Access Board does not allow that to be an entrance if not everybody can use it that way. So we make it an egress only, and really that's its sole purpose, because there's only a stair behind it. So therefore, as an egress only, we can have the steps there for egress, and then the other side, we hold it grade, and that's where everybody comes in, and then.
That's where the elevator is?
Yep.
Correct.
Steps in or steps up or steps down?
Steps down.
So we would have to introduce a ramp, a handicapped accessible ramp with rails to give those people the same
But I think this goes back to
availability.
your point, Peter. So you're building up the grade of this building to somewhat meet the change of grade, and then we're gonna end up with steps down. Correct, on building B and building C?
We're trying to balance
Yeah. No, I know, I'm just
the
asking.
connectivity
But
with your desire to get them down lower and to.
So
But
just-
it's
just
not the
a
sole-
point-
sole-
Just a point of clarification. It's not our desire to get the building down. It was your assertion that that would be the basis of the height.
I stand corrected.
But it also balances with the site. That strip of parking that you're seeing in that image is for the commercial area. That's, after working with Joe on this, so therefore, all the parking from the buildings to the back of the site is all for residential. We've done other projects in the same way. When you're parking, where your parking is located is where your entrance should be. Otherwise, people are walking around the building to get in. So therefore, these buildings' main entrance is towards the parking, which is towards the back of the site. There's enough parking there for them also as well, so most people should be parking there. That's the convenient entrance, a mailbox and elevators there. This parking here that we're seeing in the quote street strip is for commercial. If people are parking there, they should most likely be going to the right into the commercial area.
We could look at, with this move of the building and introducing of a grass strip, it is opening up some area. We can look at the grading.
Okay.
And not to change the overall grading, but can we introduce maybe some ramping or soften the grades as far as being able to get people down.
Okay, great, okay, good. What's the next topic, Gene?
The next topic is just to update you on the status of the peer review. We had submitted revised plans and calculations and documentation to the board and to
Eggleston Environmental and TEC on September 20th, about 10 days ago. Your peer reviewers were incredibly gracious and turned around their re-review. On the Eggleston side, that spurred a meeting that we had last Friday to go over her comments. What came out of that was agreement with, by and large, the majority of the outstanding issues. One of the issues that we do still need to tackle is some additional soil testing. That's scheduled for tomorrow. We are fairly confident that the soil testing, the additional soil testing that Lisa's looking for will validate some of the assumptions that we made when systems got moved around and we didn't have testing in that area. But if they do, we'll tweak the plans and calculations accordingly and try to close out those items those open items with Lisa, and hopefully report to you at the next meeting that we're fully resolved. TEC did also on the general civil side review, do the second peer review, and we're in receipt of a letter there. We got that a little bit later, but on Friday, so we'll be addressing those probably and incorporated those into some additional minor revisions and a response letter to both the two of those comment letters. Lastly, we did receive a DPW letter. Within that, Public Works was asking for a detailed design of the pump station that we need to put in. It's not really a pump station. It's going to be a manhole with pumps in it for the sewer for the back two buildings. All the commercial and the front two buildings are gravity sewer. The gravity sewer system is designed for connection to the municipal system, which is located just in the southeast portion of the site, just off of Osgood Street. Public Works is looking for us to complete that full design of the pump station, submit it to them, have it sent out to Wood and Curran to be able to assess the project's impact on the town's existing sewer system. So I need to talk to Mr. Willett and Mr. Borghese to see if that's really needed in advance of this board making any decisions. My assertion is that we're connecting to the municipal system with a gravity line. Whether or not we pump a couple of buildings integral to that really has no impact on the system. We're putting the same amount of flow through a gravity line to the municipal system. We all know what that flow is, and that flow isn't really changed just because we're pumping. In any event, if we can resolve it, we'll resolve it. If we can't, we will advance the design and go through that process. But
Okay. Becca, Jean, anything else we need to address?
Oh, this is fair assessment.
Architecturals, carports, can we go back to? We didn't look at those.
Okay.
And as far as peer review, the fire department did submit a letter today saying they have signed off, their concerns have been addressed. So the stormwater and the civil review, there's still a number of issues that I agree, tech will require some minor revisions to plans. And the stormwater, the confirmation of the soils and groundwater levels will be able to make a decision with Lisa as far as the design by the.
Okay, good. Pete, you were going to say something?
I think just one question, if I could.
Yeah.
I think we had talked at the last meeting about whether or not it was possible to get a perspective from the far side of Osgood Street. These perspectives are very helpful, and I just wanted to ask if you had that perspective from the far side.
Yes. So we can bring those up now. So view angle from Barker Street and Punch Farm Road, is that for?
Yeah.
The other one first.
Yep.
So the view angle to the building, and then the other one, Peter showed the height distance from a average height of a person. From the commercial building across to the residential, and again, that's from the corner of Barker Street, and it starts at the height of a person.
So, let me just make sure I understand this correctly. That's showing us that from the far side of Osgood, from the height of a typical person, the fourth floor and the roof would be visible.
Yes.
Just, yeah, exactly where the line cuts through.
At the lowest point of the commercial side.
Right. The
Oh.
lowest point, right?
Right.
That's the lowest point of everything.
The lowest point of the residential as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it really,
slopes this way.
it really is the worst, kind of the worst case angle from the standpoint of visibility of the residential portion in that view angles, or those two view angles.
And go back to the other one. I miss what we were looking at on the other one. So you're saying what do we see on that one? We see nothing, or?
I think that's just showing us where the earlier perspective is taken from.
Oh.
Those were the two view angles that were requested that we explore.
I know, but how many feet on this one? What's the, do you have a similar thing?
They're essentially the same.
The same feet that you just saw, so it kind of comes across the bank, proposed building number 1 of the commercial, and hits the corner of the residential building B.
Before we had, the one that we had presented before was on the other side, our side of Osgood Street.
Okay.
So it was
So
requested to
I
go
see. Okay.
over to Barker and then
So-
over to Old
Right.
Farm. And really, when we
Okay, so
looked
this
at
is
it, they
one.
ended up
Okay.
being very, very similar.
So this is, you're right, this is exactly the spot where the property would be most visible. If you move further down Barker, what you're gonna do is you're gonna be blocked first by the commercial building that's over there, and then once you've gotten past there, it goes downhill enough, I don't even think you can see the property
That's right.
directly. Okay,
Thanks.
okay. Any other questions from the board? I know there's some neighbors and interested parties here, if anybody has a question.
There is one more aspect of our presentation,
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Chairman.
John, we didn't do the elevations of the carports either.
Okay, well, let's do that first before we get questions from the public.
Have the elevations in the conference?
We have a,
No.
just use that.
So there's,
Yeah, that was.
I'm now an expert in garage doors, I just got my garage doors replaced, so. Or whatever that stuff is. What does everybody think?
No, well, first of all, they were portrayed as carports. I didn't think they were gonna have garage doors.
What's that?
No, they're individual garages, they have,
Okay.
they're
I will tell you
separated.
from looking at the Westford one, I think it looks pretty sharp, actually. I think it looks better with the doors. than-
Probably, but I'm just
yeah.
saying, I just wanted to make sure this is
Yeah.
what, you know, because
We-
you said
We
carports,
are,
and those are their
I think I
garages.
keep making this mistake of saying carports,
Okay.
and my client keeps correcting me. They're garages, they are individual, they have a demising wall between them, so they are totally, the unit,
Yeah.
the unit that is renting it has only access to it.
Yeah.
They're 20, I think they're 23 feet by 12 feet with a 9-foot door. So they're fairly large for a single.
And what are these gonna, siding, colors, have you done any of that type of stuff yet for these structures?
Match the residential building?
We haven't assigned the colors yet, but it would be the same material.
Same color scheme, same
Yes.
material, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are the ones I thought, just a quick look at them, I thought they looked reasonably nice, so.
Yeah, no, I never heard garages in the whole presentation until I saw this today. So someone never used the word garage, I don't think.
I will never say carport again.
So do we have anything else?
One final item, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Real garages.
I think Gene mentioned in your package is a memorandum on the the height waiver. I think someone asked us to explain the rationale for that. So I know it's just been distributed, so I think the more efficient way to do this is allow you all some time to read it at the next presentation. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I think it's very thorough in our explanation, and give you some time to review it, and we'll address it then.
Now, if anybody from the public wants to speak, they're free to come up, ask a question, and see if we can get an answer. Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to the next topic. So thank you all.
Thank you, folks.
Okay, Rebecca, moving right along to Edgewood.
Yes, the applicant is seeking a modification to a site plan review, modification to a continuing care retirement center, and also a watershed.
No, I'm not talking to it.
8,760 square foot continuing care retirement center. We have just received the updated site plans and response comments as of this Friday, so the consultants have not had a chance to respond to those. We have verbal confirmation from the fire department that they have met with the applicant and comments are being addressed. Conservation actually just provided a memo today that we did share with the applicant, specifically mentioning that they would need to go and get approval from the Conservation Commission for the new proposed trail access specifically. We've also gotten comments from DPW, and they are reviewing the revised site plan, and so we're still waiting their comments. We have Health and Police, and their comments have been satisfied. We've also received confirmation from the trustees of the reservation that they are working with Edgewood concerning the conservation restriction, and we should be receiving a draft of that within the next couple of days. Also, lastly, at the site visit, one of the questions that came up was the building placement, and I believe the project architect, Jessica Randolph, is here to speak specifically about that question, I believe.
I know, could you give everybody, I don't think here for the site work, and I had to leave early, but just a summary of sort of what we did and what kind of questions came up.
Of course. So essentially, we took a tour of the site, walking through Half Mile Hill at the entrance, learning about where the relocation of the trail would exactly go, the building placement and the markers in comparison to the buffer zone from the watershed, as well as the buffer from the continuing care, the 100-foot buffer between the site, the lot, and the actual proposed building. We also took a look at the specific parking or proposed parking for that particular area for Half Mile Hill. I believe there's going to be 4 designated parking spots that we saw, 5, sorry, right up front. So we saw where those were going to be designated. And then I believe the biggest concerns were essentially whether or not the building itself could be rotated so that they could close the gap between the proposed building area and the current placement of Edgewood, and also if that had any impact on preferably the stormwater structures that are proposed, and if we could kind of maneuver that and keep further away from the lake as we possibly could be.
Okay, but anybody that was there want to just add anything? Perceptions or, okay. Good, I think you did a good job, yeah. Yeah. So, okay.
Does anybody have any questions from the sidewalk on Saturday?
John
Okay,
gets
Tom.
bagels in time.
Yeah, they didn't even, I didn't even have to tell them to say that.
Would you like us to review those dimensions for the folks that weren't here, or is everybody okay with the changing of the buildings from the conceptual to where they are now?
We're okay.
Yeah.
We're okay? Okay.
Yeah.
We also have some color schemes that we're going to show you on the exterior. There were a couple that were looked at. They're certainly not finalized yet, but we are staying within the color scheme that are the cottages. So Jessica will speak on that as well a little bit. And then we also have a potential light fixture that we're looking at, which will be an LED fixture as well. And we're going to look at that actually to carry right through the campus as we continue to do a modification to the lighting. So we're going to be very particular with the selection of that fixture. So.
Again, my name is Ken Costello with SMRT Architects and Engineers in Andover, Mass. Just to reiterate the discussion about moving the building, and Jessica did some studying for the building. We've got two major requirements here, setback requirements. We have the 100-foot CCRC setback from the property line, and then we also have the 150-foot non-disturbed zone from the wetland. So that line goes right to this back corner here. This building is just outside of that, and then the 100-foot is just that, to that point right there. So if we try to rotate this building, we really can only get about 2-foot difference to rotate that distance from the lake to the back corner, the closest corner. It's not a lot of gain when we try to relocate that building.
So John, this came up after you left, and the only reason that, and I had asked about it, is could you point to the leftmost portion of the structure? No, all the way over to the left, right there. So when we were standing there, John, and you had left, it just visually looked like quite a distance from there to the existing facility. And so the only question was, do you need so much of a gap between the existing facility and there, or could you slide the building over or rotate it just to move it closer to the existing facility?
Right.
And, the answer is no, so I just asked if it was.
Yeah, I guess would be is the primary reason for not sliding it over just the 100 feet, or is there anything else that comes into play?
No, it's the 100-foot.
Okay, because I do think that's something that we actually do have the capacity to waive. I'd have to go back and look at it again. I don't think it's a variance thing, because we've run into this in a couple of cases in the past where we've had open space, because I'd have to go take a look at it, and I'm not totally sure, but, I mean, all things being equal, if you had your druthers, you would prefer that?
I don't have a strong feeling about it. I just, visually, it raised the question of, why don't we snug it up closer to the existing structures at Edgewood, but they've given us an answer. So
Yeah.
I just asked to, look into it.
But I mean, if you could do it, do you think it would be better?
Well,
Or does it create a different set of problems, I guess,
I don't know, it seems like if you rotate the building, you're gonna be bumping up against the closest to the lake.
Well, we're talking about bringing it closer away from the lake.
yeah, this is the dimension here.
Unless you
So
went over
the idea was, when we were standing here,
Yeah.
it just looked like an awful long distance of wooded area from here to the existing structures. And rather than take up space on the, side we want to conserve, the question was, could this just come over and take up this? And at the time, the question was, well, we have some retention pools there, and now we have this line. So really, it was just.
Right, but wouldn't you also, at some point, if you try to slide it too far, you would end up digging into the parking up here, and you wouldn't really
don't want that to go up into Half Mile Hill.
You don't want that to go, so you may,
So then the idea was, is it possible to just spin it? But I think
Right.
what you gain is so little.
That's what I was
it's not
gonna
worth
say,
it.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
I mean, arguably, if you could go back into this property and then bring it
Yes.
down, that would be a
Right.
better thing, but that's
So-
not what we're,
From standing there on the site, it's hard to sort of get a sense of it. So the question was,
yeah.
would it be possible? And I'm satisfied with the answer, that
Okay.
there'd be really not enough gain to make it worth it.
Okay.
John, if it could be waived, the only thing I could see that they could do is maybe move a few parking spaces down to that area without redesigning anything really. And I don't know if that, a couple of employee parking spaces might be able to help and just bring a little bit more, less clearing towards Half Mile Hill.
Yeah, but I don't
But
think really.
I don't think it's gonna be substantial enough, but.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to it that it's not a substantial enough change, I
Yeah,
don't
I don't
think.
see a lot of gain to
Yeah.
it. I appreciate you looking into it.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you could show us what you're gonna show us, it's,
Sure. Well, again, there really hasn't been a lot of modifications to the plan. We did look at that piece there. We do have some additional information in regards to the architecture piece. We have gone through the the comment letter some more. We did submit a revised stormwater calculations, because we did some additional geotechnical investigation out there in the locations for the ponds, so we have submitted forwarded a revised stormwater plan. So that's to Ms. Eggleston, I believe, yes. So that's being reviewed right now. And if you want to hear what the changes were on that, Melissa Flynn, our civil engineer, can speak to that. Again, there hasn't been a lot of changes, just basically responding. We did add a fire hydrant to the plan over here in this location. Right side of the driveway over here. And that has been reviewed with the fire department. We had a discussion with them today, and they
So again, we don't have written confirmation from fire department, but I did speak with them this morning, and verbally they have approved the project. I've asked for them to submit it in writing, and they will do so.
And then the only other, there was one issue about the easement to the property, and Paul, I want to discuss the existing easement comes in here and the proposed
Sure.
changes.
That's probably a good idea, yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Paul, can you come up to the...
Edgewood is proposing a consolidation and clarification and an express easement, grant of easement over the existing paved road, Caroline Way, with a specific easement plan. The ambiguity, going back to the chairman's original concern, and one of the concerns about clarifying access to the trailways and Half Mile Hill, et cetera, because there is some level of ambiguity about the public's rights where they're located, though people traverse the paved roads. So we have suggested and sent a draft to the board of an easement that terminates whatever rights the town has. They are somewhat ambiguous, and grants a specific right, and that's the easement you see on the board. It's basically the paved roads up to Caroline Way and then to the gravel way that heads to Half Mile Hill. And that would go to record with a copy of a plan that would show that as the public's easement, right?
Is that the same access that they would have for the school, basically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, right where this easement, the proposed easement leaves the pavement is where the driveway is to the school.
Right, yeah. Okay. That's good, it's good to clean that up, probably.
It's clean as a whistle,
Yeah.
yeah. And it goes to record, obviously, with the site plan, with the easement, a map that shows the location.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with that, Jessica, would you like to?
So we took what we had presented last time, which was set up in just neutral color tone. We started to put together a couple of concepts, which we're still reviewing, in the process of reviewing with Edgewood, but we are going to keep fairly neutral. We'll probably do a little bit of a pop of the red that's out there on the Edgewood cottages already. And it's going to be wood siding. We also have chimneys. Of course, I pulled a little bit of a brick sample to represent those. But like I said, this is work in progress. We're still reviewing it, but kind of give you an idea of what it looks like on the site with color rather than that bright whitish building the previous time.
Again, the color tones are going to basically be in the same palette as the cottages.
What paint color goes on what wall.
And because of the way the massing of the building has been set up, there is the opportunity to kind of differentiate the entranceway to make it, more of a New England feel where you have multiple buildings connected.
Yeah. Well, I do think that just my personal opinion, that the cottages are the best single-family homes built in North Andover since all the years I've been on the planning board. So, really very, great attention to detail. If everything was built in this town was built that way, we'd be very nice, so.
Now, the entranceways, are those open, so like people can pull up and it's standing room underneath the portico, or, I can't tell from that angle. Or is it?
It's underneath that.
So basically, we have a drop-off area, but it's a front porch up against the building. Okay. And we are actually working on getting a way so that people getting out of their car can be undercover. We're not going to have you drive under though, because that kind of makes it, gives it the new, it makes it look like a nursing home, basically, or, you know, like your clubhouse or whatever. So we really want this to have a residential feel to it, so. So yes, but we are trying to get it so that at least as soon as you get out of the car, you're undercover.
And Lynn, that was, you know, we have a resident advisory group that we work through the entire process with, through the project, and that was one of their comments as well, because, you know, we're trying to balance that between it looking like a New England farmhouse to giving them cover, and that was one of their concerns, that they want us to bring that out. As you said, we're not gonna go out over the roadway because you have to have clearance for fire department, et cetera, so it'll be something that will be edge of sidewalk for the residents, and it might be off-skewed a little bit, but that's what we're looking at doing for them.
I think I've missed some meetings where you guys presented, but I'm just curious. There's no window on that side, is that because that's like an area inside that can't have a window, or that just seems a little
Yeah, so
awkward?
in the plan, that's actually a lot of service area. We actually are looking at what we can do to break that up a little. But we also, this is also the entrance into our kind of service area, so we are going to be doing a lot of landscaping and
Disguise the fact that there's no window would be nice.
we'll break down the elevation a little bit, definitely.
We have earthen berms, the grading, that this area here and this area here are actually burned and then planted. So that's this
that
is the
part,
wall you're
okay.
seeing right here.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Do we care about the roof color of the shingle, since we'll have some views from Half Mile Hill or not?
Well, we might as well tell us what it is.
Well,
No
I mean,
harm,
it's
no
bright
foul.
white, I think they care, but other than that, I don't think they care.
I think it's pretty neutral. I would presume it's something similar to what you
Yeah,
have
we're
on the
looking at the
houses.
gray,
Yeah.
like the dark gray charcoal. This printed it out a little bit darker than we actually are looking at, because we were looking at pretty much matching what's the cottage is. It's kind of like a charcoal.
Okay. Got it. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go
It's not related to this. The color.
Okay, well, go ahead. Any questions, fine.
So, one of the things we learned at the site visit was that Edgewood maintains and empties the trash for Half Mile Hill.
Yes.
So, Jean, are you okay?
Sorry.
So, my question is, with the anticipated new trail network downslope by the lake, is there any possibility that Edgewood could have a similar arrangement with trash receptacles on that trail?
Yes.
I think that would really be terrific if that were
Good.
possible.
Do you want a boat slip for the harbor master too?
I think dogs have to, the dog that has to come out.
Yeah.
I won't go into all the details.
Okay. I read it.
Good. Any other questions from the board? Anything from the public?
There, one thing to note is that we have had conversations with the Friends of North Andover Trails. We invited them to the site visit. They were unable to attend at that time, but we did reach out to them afterwards to give them an overview of the things that had taken place and go over the updated site plan. We've had phone conversations and whatnot, but they would like to come and speak on behalf of their group and share.
Okay,
some of
great,
their-
excellent. Well, come right up if,
I'm Glenn Aspesley with the Friends of North Andover Trails. I want to thank you for keeping us up to date with the project and everything. It's been really helpful to get all the updated plans through the last couple of months. And I just had a couple quick comments about the latest plan. It does look like that our primary concern, of course, was trail access and relocating the parking. And it looks like the latest plan addresses that nicely. I had a question about the easement. I think it's great that we're making it official and everything, but just from my prior experience looking at planning documents from 10 years ago and finding out what actually happened later, I just wanted to clarify that this easement is for cars, bikes, and pedestrians, and that have that stated in the actual grant of the easement, rather than just keeping it very vague, and also that it that easement, that granting that easement is a condition for this project versus just not having that in writing.
No problem.
Secondly, you probably saw at the site visit, you go along Caroline Way, and then you turn left onto that gravel road, and then you've always kind of driven right up to those picnic tables and parked. We've had a lot of complaints over the past couple of years about the condition of that road, because it gets a lot of potholes and it gets really, really muddy in the spring and the fall. And I'm wondering, was there any particular reason why it's historically been a gravel path? And wondering if that could potentially be paved, because that would also allow us to mark the designated parking spots. Does anyone have any idea why?
I don't know. I like
That's
that,
always just been gravel.
But that's just me.
Yeah, I just feel like people may shy away from it when it's muddy and just park in the
I mean,
Edgewood
part of
paved
the
parking.
problem is what you got is you got the Edgewood stuff that's paved, and then you got a little thing, and then you got that, and it would look kind of like hell if you had two paved things right next to each other. I mean, I think
That's
it
true.
would look worse, but.
Typically, we stay away from impervious pavement as much as possible.
Yeah.
The more impervious pavement, the more runoff could conceivably go into the water.
That is, well, yeah. So perhaps maybe making sure that it gets regraded so that it's not in its current state with the big muddy potholes. Maybe
Fair enough.
something to consider.
Yeah. Fair enough. So.
John, last fall, the town actually came in and regraded that. We did not do that. That was DPW that came in and fixed those potholes last fall.
Okay.
Yeah, DPW is typically really good at addressing concerns with the trailheads and access points.
Yeah.
So. And then
Just have them come in, take a look at it again. Yeah.
And then the second thing was the plowing of that access. Is that something that will be plowed by Edgewood or the town, or just not plowed at all?
We plowed that last season, so we will continue to plow that
Awesome.
access.
Great.
Yep.
Great. And then a couple more minor things. The conservation restriction. This is probably really obvious, but is that something that is in the conditions for the very specifically that conservation restriction needs to be granted
Yeah,
for
it
this
has
to go
be.
forward?
It's
Okay.
part of the zoning.
As we just have seen a lot of situations where a development goes in and 10 years later the open space is still nothing's been done deed-wise, and it's still owned by some developer who was, flown the coop.
If you show us any of those,
I have a.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because I've always operated under the assumption that we gotten them all, but if we haven't, then
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
I'm probably exaggerating the amount of times this has happened, but.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
And then one final thing, the landscaping plan looks really great, but my concern was if you can go to the landscaping plan, I think is towards the end. I think it's like the last page. So, yeah, keep going.
Last page, keep going down.
There.
There we go, yeah. So you can barely see in this plan the stone wall that delineates the property line is kind of running along the edge of the arbor vitae wall. That long stretch of new parking in the middle.
Yeah.
And then there's the arbor vitae wall, and then the stone wall, and then you go basically right into Half Mile Hill open field. And there's maybe a few trees on the other side of the stone wall, like mature trees over there. But I had two comments about that. The first one is, has any consideration been given to retaining some trees that may be growing like right at the stone wall? 'Cause surely there's some mature trees there that are kind of on the development side of that stone wall that could potentially be retained. I don't know if there's an issue with grading there that may make that not doable.
We're only taking trees down that are required in order to put that parking in. That buffer zone between the trail at Half Mile Hill all the way up to the parking area, those trees are gonna stay. We're only removing what we absolutely have to for
I
grading.
mean, I think one of the things that we did pick up on the sidewalk was that as we begin the development process, that we'll be really mindful of mature trees, because there might be one in a certain spot that if you just make a slight tweak, you can keep it or not. So, you know, again, I think we all have to be reasonable about it, but, you know, I think they're committed to preserving as many of the trees as possible,
Okay.
because it's actually in their interest.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they're not going to be removing trees on the left side of that stone wall, because that's the
Right.
Half Mile Hill
Yeah.
one. But
The
it just
other
seems like
thing
all
is
the
I said-
plans I've seen so far, the parking comes like, you know, like 2 feet from the stone
is
wall.
that, we would give the applicant the flexibility of waiving the actual construction of a portion of the parking. If, you know, what you do is if you build it, you can't do anything about it, but if you provide for it and then don't build it, and then you see whether you need it or not, if it turns out you never need it, then you just never build it. That's something that we would give them the capability of doing.
That whole stretch of parking right there?
A part of it,
Okay.
where it most reasonably can be stripped off. We would waive the construction of that in the beginning. It may not be feasible to do that, but we would give them the option of doing that.
Okay. And then the final thing is the arbor vitae wall itself. To me, that doesn't feel very natural. I mean, it's going to be budding right up to the open field vista
What are you
in the
talking
winter.
about there? The stuff at the top?
Do you see?
The strip along the left-hand side of the parking lot?
Yeah, there's that long stretch
This
of
thing,
parking. Yeah. Yeah, and then there's 16 arbor vitae going along, and it's kind of stuck in between a stone wall and that long stretch of parking. And that's when you're like standing at the top of the hill, looking down, that's kind of the buffer, but so you don't see like a parking lot. Especially in the winter when there's no leaves on those mature trees on the other side of the stone wall. And I was just wondering if maybe something a little more natural like white pine might, I mean, I'm not a landscape architect, but arbor vitae wall doesn't seem very natural and open spacey to me.
Yeah.
It just,
Fair enough. Where's Huntress when you need him here? So,
Yeah, I can speak to that if you like.
Yeah, sure.
So the arborvitaes there will remain there, will retain their vegetation, their leaves at the lower elevations, but as the white pines grow, they basically lose all their vegetation on the lower half, so you just see trunks at that point. So that this provides a screen basically from the ground up rather than the later date. And you know, they grow 20, 25 feet, where you're talking about an 80-foot, you know, potentially in the future, an 80-foot high white pine in that location right above the parking lot's actually not a desired location.
have you considered anything about the deer situation with those shrubs though?
Yeah, I mean, we can look at that and propose a different shrub if that's the case, if deer browsing is going to be an issue. But again,
It is.
yeah. Again, though, we're trying to provide a screen from the ground up.
Okay.
Okay. We gotta just keep, I mean, one of the things you still have the flexibility of doing is, you know, in the field as you're actually building out, you can see what'll work or what won't work, so.
Yeah, I really do like the concept you mentioned about making that parking area optional. That certainly would be nice.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all my comments.
Great job on the North Andover Trail guide.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really terrific.
I think we got the selectmen copies of that. We should get the planning board.
I've got a copy.
Okay.
Yeah. Good, great, thank you.
Dan, did you have a comment?
Stan Limpert, 43 Stone Cleve Road. I'm also a member of the Friends of North Andover Trails. Glenn, of course, is the president of the organization and has done a wonderful job really getting that organized and really being a strong advocate for trails here in North Andover. I just wanted to echo his comments about the paving of the parking spaces and the access road. While I understand the aesthetic argument, the problem is what actually ends up happening in the real world. People come up there once when it's real muddy, and then they come up on the Edgewood side and park in their paved parking spaces. That's what actually happens because it's not practical, or they don't want to get their car all messed up in the mud. So it would just be, I think, make it a little bit more attractive for people to want to use that access and those spaces if it was in fact paved. I understand the aesthetics, but the problem is it just doesn't work practically in at least 2 of our seasons. I would just add that. The other thing that concerns me is this is from the trailhead the way it currently exists. This project has completely changed the aesthetics from that point of view. There's a completely different and new vista there from when you start at that trailhead. And my concern is that it's sort of hard to get back to where you would see that vista now going up the Half Mile Hill Trail. And even though there's that extension out to the new parking, the part that goes around the access road, not very appealing. Is there some way that you could sort of route the trail a little bit differently, not so close to the road there, and sort of curve it up into its current position where it currently exists, so that it's not like you feel like you're walking along the road there until you get to something else? It just doesn't seem like that's very aesthetically pleasing, if you will, because you've got to walk quite a ways up that trail now to start to see the vista you would have seen before, and it's sort of unfortunate. So that's the only aesthetic part of this part of the bottom end of the trail that I think could be a little bit improved. Now, I know there's some stone walls and stuff there that would have to be dealt with, but maybe somebody could just give that some thought to kind of make that.
So where does the revised trail go?
What's that?
Where does the revised trail go?
It comes straight out to the road, along the parking, and then it goes up, right? And then it loops right around the road, right? And it connects up here to the existing trail. It'd be nice if it could sort of not, it's just not a very aesthetic thing. It's like.
So if these are the trail experts, can't we take their advice on where the trail should be?
Well.
And I think you have to realize that's not, that's the property of the school as well. The easement actually is over.
I mean, arguably, where the trail was going today was on private property.
Right.
It's not on Edgewood property or town property,
That abutting property is actually the preschool property?
Right, that's the preschool property.
No, but I'm talking about the existing trail was on the, private property, and,
You do an order of condition to the Conservation Commission, is the sole caretakers of the trail, so they would need to have 100% approval of where that relocation.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Yeah, this portion of the trail is on the school property. So right now, this stone wall right here is the limit of the easement.
Right.
The easement that comes up through here, with Edgewood's property being run right down the middle of that easement. So any relocation on that would have to be through the school.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Great. Anything more we need to?
We're peer review for OTEC and Lisa still. I just wanted to get comments. Also, DPW and Conservation have submitted comments.
Okay.
Like I said, Fire Department has signed off.
Do we have very much open? We should be able to finish the next time, right?
Yes, we're scheduled for our variance hearing next Tuesday.
Tuesday with zoning for the new structure in the watershed. And then we're waiting on the draft CR, so that should be reviewed by council.
Right.
And the easement language should be reviewed by council as well. So
That is correct.
right, so assuming we can
And
get all that.
We probably can wait on the new, the easements over the trails closer to the lake. Well, no, we don't need to do that right away, but we should do that obviously at some time.
I'm sorry, what do you,
The access over this property closer to the lake, the.
Half Mile Hill?
No, well, it's on this property. In
This-
other words, if you walk from Ware Hill all the way over through this property, there's a trail network that's
Yep.
further down the hill. There's-
Across Edgewood's existing parcel,
And this parcel.
and this parcel, yeah.
And we need to get easements for that.
And they're both included within the CR.
Oh,
The
I
draft
know.
CR,
Oh, they
the
are,
town's
okay.
access
Yeah,
to both
okay.
of those.
Then
So
that's
we
even
currently
better.
do not have that specified in Edgewood's current property, but they are gonna clean that up as part
Yeah.
of this as
That's
well.
good, okay.
So.
And ZBA did do a site walk on Friday night as well. So we did walk with them Friday evening.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Mill.
So for High Street, the applicant seeks a modification to a downtown overlay special permit for the construction of 108 parking spaces, including landscaping and stormwater improvements. Stormwater has signed off that the applicant has satisfied all of our comments. DPW, Fire, Health, and Building have all reviewed the project, and they have all confirmed that they have no further comments. The applicant, the applicant is currently before the Conservation Commission for an amendment to the order of conditions, and they are also seeking a certificate to alter from the Machine Shop Village Neighborhood Commission, and there is a drafted decision in your packet.
Okay, since you put that up, we feel that you'll have to give us a little bit of an update on what you're talking about.
It's a split-second decision, so I can tell you that. Just to give you, for the record, my name is Phil Henry with Civil Design Group. Just to give you a timeline from where we were 2 weeks ago, we were here 2 weeks ago on 9/20. We received comments from Lisa on 9/21, and we also received comments from DPW, which I expressed last time, and one of their two comments was make sure the applicant addresses Lisa's comments. The other one was make sure to provide some sort of wheel stops, which at that time we had already incorporated, and Lisa already, she then commented on the same. So on 9/21, we received comments from her. They were relatively minor in nature and technical regarding to stormwater and how we interpreted various soils and how we manage that stormwater. So we were able to turn that around on 9/22, and then before our conservation hearing last week, she essentially approved, she agreed with our responses and agreed that there was no further action with one minor thing, and that was consolidating the operation and maintenance plan, which we had subsequently done. So and submitted to Rebecca and Jennifer. And so we feel that we've addressed all the comments. Rebecca and I also were coordinating on some of the landscaping, and we are in compliance with the applicable landscaping sections of not only the general landscaping, but also the overlay district as well. So we feel that we've covered all of our bases, and we left conservation last week saying that, despite that there's no more future issues, that they would like to keep that hearing open until this board closes. So, thank you.
So we confirm with conservation that it's progressed through them as well, and as long as you're satisfied,
Okay.
they should be able to close the next hearing.
Any questions from the board? Laura? Dave? Lynn?
You were gonna have a patio area in the middle of the existing parking lot. Now you're connecting it, is that gonna connect through, or is that still in the works? Over that, remember that?
You're referring in the phase one.
Over that culvert under the ground?
Over where the culvert.
Yeah, you can't park cars because of
Well, we ran into the significant grade change on the other side. So where we left off is that we're going to see how things worked in the field. So it looks like there's an ability to get into that area from what's on the right-hand side of the plan, the north without too much effect on grade. But right now, we have it all landscaped and protected into that area. So at this time, we're not proposing to do anything particular out there. We might do some displays or we didn't want to have to contend with the full accessibility of that patio area until we have a long-term plan for it.
So you're gonna leave it,
It'll be left open
yeah.
like that, maybe with some,
yeah, you're gonna leave it flexible, so. you don't
yeah,
have to do
flexible,
anything.
exactly.
Okay.
Any other things we need to, so we can close? Somebody like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
We have our decision already.
Just comment on the header, we probably should have put modification number 2, so if we don't lose track of them, because they may be back again.
In the findings of fact, we list the first 2 dates in that, but that's fine.
Okay, yeah.
We do reference that this is a modification to a modification.
Yeah.
I think the date of decision is wrong.
Yes. October 1.
And finding of fact 4 towards the end, the sentence that O&M plan for this project shall be integrated into the previous, that's all fine. Then the next part in the figure depicting the locations to be maintained and designated to be updated accordingly. It doesn't read well, but I also think it's more a condition than it is. It sounds like the second one is you will do this, so maybe should be more in the decision than it should be there. Again, I like the findings of fact, but I think you might want to clean that one up a little bit.
Number 20, what are the exterior changes? Or is that just a normal thing? I mean, I thought this was
Yeah.
all parking.
There are on the facade of building 36 that faces into that parking area, there's some entries that have to be revised
Okay,
to work with the grade.
all right, okay.
I was just curious. Just on 17, the cooling tower will be set level and flush with the landscape. You don't have to have it raised?
No, it is, which one was that one?
17.
17.
It's sitting on a concrete platform
Right.
that is about 2 feet up, but there's different grades of the landscaping around it. So in relation to the
Okay.
parking lot, it's not sitting on
Not sitting on
columns
stilts,
anymore.
but I was gonna
It's
say,
sitting on
it is raised.
essentially a
Okay.
curb, yeah.
Okay.
In 44, what is the word lot referring to here?
It's the standard general language that we use in our permits.
It could be site, Peter, it could be parcel. It's just referring to the whole general area, scope of work.
Yes, that's fine.
Or you could even use the, what's the definition we have here? The locus
The
site,
locus,
yeah.
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 Gene, again, I found it minor details. Generally, when we use initials, the first time we use them, as in best management practices, BMPs, well, that was back on page 2. You might want to just shift it back. I was thinking it was something to do with pumping.
And 56, dates off. Make that October 4th, right?
Yes. We had intended to try to get this done in one.
Last time, yeah.
Successful.
Okay, everybody done? So, would somebody like to make a motion to approve their permit as amended this evening?
Make a motion to approve the modification to the downtown overlay special permit for 4 High Street as amended.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay. We're on to our highly important Verizon discussion.
So the planning board approved the decision, 2 decisions, one on June 7th for the 24 locations, and then another on September 6th for 9 locations. For the permit approved September 6th for the 9 locations, there are some indiscrepancies in terms of the antenna dimensions. We have them listed as being 15 by 24, when there are some actually that are 12 by 37. The site plans that were submitted were correct, and the consultant did review the correct dimensions of the actual canisters themselves. However, during the discussion at the hearings and also in our decision, we incorrectly identify all of them as being 15 by 24, when in reality, only 2 of those are, and the other 6 are 12 by 37. Additionally, some of the utility poles that are listed in both the September and June decision were changed by the utility provider over that span of time, and they are slightly taller than what the site plans have them listed as. They are no more than 5 feet of an increase, however, they are taller. So the applicant had reached out to their radiation safety specialist that had done the FCC regulation testing for the original application, and upon doing so, said that and can confirm that the changes in height and or the antenna types proposed would not change the analysis or the conclusion regarding compliance with the FCC emissions regulations.
Okay.
So the applicant is here requesting an insubstantial change. But before I hand it over to Chris, there was one comment that came in, because this was on our agenda. The the Historical District Commission had made a comment that they would like it to go on record that if any of these are to be installed in the future, and specifically in any historical area, that they be notified of these installations.
So this is the Old Center Historic Commission. The chair is, I believe, George Sharenda. He made a call. One of them is slotted to be on Academy Road. It's already been approved and permitted, and he just asked in the future that they be notified if any of these are within their district, which is fair enough. Yeah. And I told him we would raise that with the board tonight, and we will do that in the future, so.
Any opinions?
The polls changed?
The pole themselves have changed some of
Did
the
that change any of the butters list?
No, the pole height changed, not the
Oh, pole
specific
height, okay.
pole. So when they,
That was my question.
so there were dimensions of, we thought it would be 32 feet, it's now 38 feet. The 5 poles were included in your packet, all of which we've just made sure we ran it back by the consultant to make sure it's still in compliance with regulations. So again, 35 went to 38, 30, I believe 34 went down to 29, so they went in both directions.
So I guess what I would say is that if everybody's okay, somebody should make a motion that the planning board deems these insubstantial changes to the 2 previous decisions.
And again, I just want to make sure you understand the dimension of the canister. They got narrower but taller, but within compliance. Okay.
Is there a way to somehow incorporate documentation that the consultant has also given a conclusion that it does not affect?
What you should do is write up a
Right.
letter.
So we'll document it as an insubstantial change, and we'll require the new dimensions to be included in the as-built. And as a finding of fact within that document, we include that type of information.
I would move that this be considered an insubstantial change.
The 2 previous.
The 2 previous decisions.
Just an explanation of how this happened, and mostly because it probably will happen again. What we're finding, the utility companies don't care that much about us. They let us go on these poles because they have to under both federal law and state law. And as we go out to build them, we're finding some of them have been changed in anticipation of what we're doing, but yet we weren't notified of that until we actually went out to install. So what I was hoping is that we could deem changes of this character insubstantial moving forward in case this happens again. Obviously, I don't want carte blanche to do whatever, but if we limit it to, as discussed, to...
Well, I mean, I think that we can't